Why do the bishops allow this? You might be asking that question pretty frequently these days, especially since we're still in the kind of wishing upon a star phase of the new papacy, where people are assuring everybody, the various factions are, their loudest voices are, that Pope Leo is on the side of whichever faction is speaking. You'll have conservative and traditionalist commentators giving Pope Leo a chance, which completely understandable. And you have radical modernist ones, American Magazine, the National Catholic Reporter, and their European equivalents, all saying that the Pope is on their side of the Great Divide. But the question is, why do the bishops allow this? And when I say this, I mean the errors that we see all over. And when you do a little digging, you begin to learn that many of the times it's the bishops themselves who are behind these things. We saw the purging of Catholic theology and Catholic theologians from an actual seminary in Detroit. We've seen crushing of traditional masses in Charlotte, and not just a traditional mass, but the Novus Ordo offered in a reverent way that people will sometimes call a unicorn mass. Gone. All of it gone. And it's as if they act knowing that no one in Rome will stop them. That if they don't have a friend in Rome, at least they have a disinterested party in Rome. That seems to be what a lot of people are suggesting. We recently had a Jubilee youth event in Rome. The Pope participated. He gave a homily. Something like 1 million young people, however you define young people these days, participated. By all measures, a resounding success. And you had also parallel events for people who couldn't attend the proper event. So we go here to this story from LifeSite News. Headline: Woman dressed in clerical attire attempts to co-consecrate Eucharist at Holy House of Loreto. According to reports, a woman participated in a Jubilee of Youth Mass at the altar and appeared to lift her hands as if she were celebrating. I'm going to begin by playing devil's advocate. You'll hear traditionally minded Catholics, people like myself, first among them, saying that it is inappropriate for you as a layperson during mass to have your hands what's called the orans posture. That's generally where you've got your hands up like this during mass, where you're almost like reflecting the prayers back or something from the priest, or trying to participate in the consecration or whatever it is. I've never understood why laity mimic the actions of the priest at the altar. And according to the general instruction of the Roman Missal for the Novus Ordo Mass, for the new Mass, and that general instruction is the instruction of the priest and the laity on how to participate in the Mass and how to offer the Mass. The laity are not supposed to do those things. Now, some people go, well, it's not that big of a deal, yada, yada, yada. I get the argument, but remember, the church has the right, in fact, the duty to govern how the holy sacrifice of the Mass is offered. After all, Vatican II documents tell us that the Eucharist is the source and summit of the faith. And as such, that means it has a pride of place, and the church has the right to govern said rules. My charitable answer to this question, to play devil's advocate, is that this woman was participating with the orans posture stuff. That's one interpretation. It's not a good one, and I don't mean good one as in a believable, meaning she shouldn't have been up there doing that stuff anyway. But it's plausible. Let's go for more details, though, because here we get to all the ordination of the ladies stuff that the modernists so love so much. Quote, during a July Mass at the sanctuary of the Holy House of Loreto for the Jubilee of Youth, a woman dressed in priestly garments participated in the Mass at the altar, along with the concelebrants, and appeared to lift her hands as if she were concelebrating the liturgy. Video from the 28th of July Mass, concelebrated by the bishops of the Marche region to commemorate the Jubilee of Youth, shows the unidentified woman, viewable in, they have a video here of it, processing to the altar alongside the Catholic concelebrants of the Mass, and may have attempted to concelebrate the Mass. In recent years, several female quote-unquote priests have been permitted to concelebrate Catholic Masses. End quote. And yes, I've covered that before. Bishops have in recent years allowed self-proclaimed priestesses of the Catholic Church from blatantly schismatic and heretical groups. And no, they're not priestesses. They don't have holy orders. They can't receive holy orders. Church has said this since the beginning. But some bishops don't care because they have gone on the record to say that the church needs to do something about this grave injustice, thus accusing the spotless bride of Christ of, in fact, not being so spotless at all. They're apostates when they do this. But they allow these cosplayers, we'll say, to live action role play being a priest and to concelebrate, in quotes, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Many of these bishops do this because they are true believers in the cause. They believe truly that God sent them and the men who made them priests, that generation of priests, to radically transform the church because the church had gone off the rails and had embraced error and sin. Remember, they believe that the spotless bride of Christ isn't so spotless at all, and that Jesus is so very lucky to have them to save his church from whatever. They tend to not believe that the church is guided by the Holy Ghost. You see them say this stuff. I've documented it here on this channel many times over the years. So if you wonder why they do this stuff, why they allow this to happen, it's because they have an agenda. And their agenda is to radically transform the Catholic Church into what gets called in Catholic prophecy, the ape of the church. There is no other way to describe it. That is the language Fulton Sheen used when he was referencing prophecy in some of his most famous statements about the crisis in the church. And certainly having someone at the altar acting like a priest, pretending to concelebrate a Mass, would definitely count as being part of the crisis in the church. Back to the article, quote, "The Catholic Church teaches that it is impossible for women to receive validly the sacrament of holy orders. The Church also teaches that ecclesial communities derived from the Reformation, meaning Protestant so-called churches, which the woman is likely a member of, do not have valid holy orders at all because of broken apostolic succession. They can neither confect the Blessed Sacrament of the Eucharist nor give absolution for sins. Canons 907 and 908 of the Code of Canon Law also expressly forbid the laity from offering the prayers of the Eucharist, as well as prohibiting Catholic priests from concelebrating with non-Catholic ministers. In the celebration of the Eucharist, deacons and lay persons are not permitted to say the prayers, especially the Eucharistic prayer, nor to perform the actions which are proper to the celebrating priest. Catholic priests are forbidden to concelebrate the Eucharist with priests or ministers of churches or ecclesial communities which are not in full communion with the Catholic Church. While the woman in the video is not wearing liturgical vestments, a congregant at the Mass told Italian website The Daily Compass that the woman extended her hand during the consecration, signifying her concelebration. While LifeSite News was unable to confirm this testimony, the woman notably raised her hands with the Catholic priests after the acclamation of the faithful, suggesting she may have made the same gesture during the consecration. End quote. The article goes on to give you some very real examples of how this has happened before, with some self-identified priestesses participating in a concelebration of the new Mass. How does this happen? The bishops know who they're inviting to participate at these things. They know. People are vetted at these kind of events before they can get anywhere near that altar as a lay server or as a priest or anything in between. They do it because they are believers in the revolution. They believe that somewhere in the church's history, the real church went underground, and the church that was made legal by Constantine was somehow fell into the grip of rigidity and clericalism and all the rest of that stuff. Their argument is the same as the Babylonian captivity argument some Protestants make. Some Protestants agree that the Catholic Church was the church founded on the rock of Peter by Jesus Christ. What they believe, though, is that the true church had to go underground because Constantine was essentially a usurper who took the church over and imposed a bunch of pagan doctrines on it. And that from there, the authentic Christianity was lost, hidden underground by enclaves of schismatics and what we would call heretics, who were the true church. And it was that Jesus was so very lucky to have Martin Luther and Henry VIII, men of moral fiber. Can't say that without laughing. I'm sorry. If you know anything about Luther and Henry VIII, you know that those men were not the most moral people. To be fair, neither was Pope Leo X either. He was a scoundrel of history, if there ever was one. But they're so very lucky to have had, or Jesus was so very lucky to have them, because those men were instruments of God's justice, and he restored the true faith that isn't the same depending on which one of the so-called reformers you listen to. Not such a different argument coming from these so-called reformers in our midst who maintain their status within the Catholic Church on paper, but are fully driven by the same ideological desire to reform the church into their own image. What you see with that stuff is a glimpse into what the ape of the church will look like, if it's not here already. I'm curious what you think about this, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't, it does help. Sharing this on social media helps too, and if you've ever thought about supporting the work we do here at Return to Tradition, options in the description box below all help keep these daily messages coming. It's Patreon, Subscribe Star, the join button, which is now the Subscribe Plus button, all those things, all of which were asked for by viewers of the channel. Again, the support does keep this channel operating and is greatly appreciated. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.